Hey, it's Jess, and welcome to The Heartstrong, a podcast where we explore navigating the challenges in our lives. It's my personal mission to guide you towards your greatest potential. So come along with me as we explore living with courage, or as I put it, living heartstrong. Welcome to the Heartstrong podcast. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with Melissa Burgess, founder of the fantastic and delicious smelling candle company, Craft & Foster. Melissa has a super inspiring story that includes being a veteran and facing PTSD, being a wife and a mother of four, and creating a candle company that has grown from a local pop-up to a nationally recognized brand. Today, we're going to talk about allowing our stories to shape our lives, leaning into what is in front of us, and creating brands that impact our world for good. And I want to tell you real quick before we get started that I met Melissa recently because I reached out to her about doing a Heartstrong candle. So we're actually working on 2 candles. We just chose the scents recently, and they're going to be fabulous. And I can't wait for you to check them out in our shop when they are ready. So Melissa, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I thought it would be fun to start talking about how Craft & Foster came to life and what's the original story behind your shop?
Yes, well, we call Craft and Foster an accidental candle company. I never, I wasn't young and dreamed up having a candle company of my own one day or anything like that. Um, I had kind of gone through like a really hard season of life. I have 4 children. I had just had our 3rd baby. And long story short, when I was 19, I joined the military. And I really shortly after I got out of basic training, I ended up in Iraq. It was like real quick. And I was a medic in the Army and just happened to be really good at that job. And so they attached me to an infantry unit while I was over there. And I was there for 13 months and I went on all kinds of missions that women don't normally go on, and did things women don't normally do when they go to war, and came back and had a real rough go. And, it's been almost 20 years now and I'm still kind of journeying that whole process out. But I have had my up seasons and my really down seasons. And so right after I had Ezra, I had a really, really rough go. And so I was looking for something to put my hands to. So I started like building furniture and doing all this crazy stuff, like building these shelves and then trying to like sell them on Etsy. And it like actually cost me money to ship to people. So it was like,
That will work.
yeah. And so, I'm like making all these things and doing all this stuff. And my friend gave me a little candle kit, and it was like a gift. I don't know if it was a gift for, when I had Ezra or like my birthday or something like that, but I made a candle. I remember thinking, oh man, I love that, because Chad and I burned candles all the time. We were constantly burning candles everywhere. And so then she signs me up for this market for the furniture stuff, and she's going. And so I'm like, okay, I'll go with you. And, I had just had a baby. So it's like, I don't know who I think I am that I'm going to build all these furniture pieces and take them out to the market when I'm still like in the first like 6 weeks of having a child,
Right.
So instead I made a batch of candles, like probably 30, 40 candles, and just picked some scents. Didn't really know a ton about candle making or anything like that. But I took them to this market and I sold almost all of them. And I was like, that's interesting. And so then I signed up for a couple more markets that summer, and same thing happened. And so then I tell Chad, I'm like, Chad, I think maybe we've got something here. It feels right. Everyone loves them, and I think you should help me sell them. And he's got a background in sales and marketing, and at that point, my candles were in like these little Etsy looking kind of mason jars with the little rustic lid with the little, I like tied on the little label and stuff, and just
Yep.
like, well, if I'm gonna sell these, we're gonna have to make different. So, we rebranded the whole thing into like almost like an indie kind of candle company. And then it really, it took off out of nowhere.
Wow.
Never would have expected it. It was like one of those things that you try a lot of things, and then the thing that wants to happen happens. And that's kind
Yeah.
of how it went.
Mm.
Within that first I think 16, 18 months, we were like in Neiman Marcus. Neiman
Oh
Marcus
my
found
gosh.
we were in Neiman Marcus, and Nordstrom was reaching out, and we had retailers all across the nation, and were we were like in these packages in the Golden Globes, and we'd worked with
Oh
FabFitFun
my
and all this kind of
goodness.
stuff, and it just blew up, and it was a real wild time also because I have 3 kids at home, and I'm doing all of this out of our apartment in California. Like,
Oh my gosh.
we have this like 3-bedroom apartment, and it's like the tiniest little thing. Everything in California is like the tiniest little thing. And so I was making candles for Neiman Marcus in my kitchen, like on my stovetop. I didn't even have equipment then. Um,
Wow.
I'm doing like these FabFitFun deals that are like massive, like in my basement. I made like 4,000 candles for FabFitFun on my basement floor.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
the
Wow.
craziest things. And I think I look back and it's been 8 years now, almost a decade of my life, lots and lots of hard work. And we still laugh about it. I can't believe we own a candle company. This is the thing out of all the things. Went to college, got a degree, did all these things, and I own a candle company. So
Mhm.
it's uh it's interesting. It wanted to happen.
It wanted to happen. I
Yep.
love how you said that the thing that wants to happen happens. I think
Yeah.
that's so true, but we
Mhm.
have to have, I guess, some level of surrender for that to happen too. Like, don't you
Mhm.
think?
Yeah, definitely. I could still be trying to like build shelves on Etsy
Right.
and ship them off. I think that's the thing is what I look back on now is like I tried a lot of things, and
Mhm.
one thing led to the next, and then
Mm.
that led to the next, and then
Mhm.
Craft and Foster happened, and so
Yeah.
I think not being afraid to pivot and change and just totally redo. I
Yep.
think that's building shelves to making handmade soy candles. Um,
Mhm.
those are very different things. And we were also like working in foster care then. And, like I said, I have a degree and I have all these things, but it seems to be the way my life naturally flowed there.
Flowed.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm a Jesus person. And so, I feel like, when you're listening to the Lord and trying to follow that still small voice in your heart, like when you're
Mhm.
still at night, what's feeling right? What are the things that are opening up without you having to like kick down a door? Sometimes you have to
Yeah.
keep the door open, but where's the natural lean and the natural leading, and you
Mhm.
follow it. And that's kind of what
Mhm.
we did with Craft and Foster. Not that we haven't made tons of mistakes and kicked down the wrong doors, but that is kind of what we've done. We've just followed it as it opened up before us, and it has been
Mhm.
an incredible journey. Lots of ups and lots of downs. Building a business
Yeah,
is hard. But it's
it
been,
is.
I look back, especially now in this season where I'm at now, I look back with like a really grateful heart
Mm.
um, that I didn't like count myself out on this in the
Yeah,
beginning. I could have told Neiman
yeah.
Marcus, like, I'm making these on my stovetop, right? Or whatever else.
Right.
Um, but
Hmm.
we went with it, and it became something beautiful, which is pretty
Something
incredible.
beautiful. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like so many times I think in our lives, like we want to force things because we think they're the thing that we want to do.
Yep.
And something you said is something that I feel like I'm learning. And I feel like we have this culture, right? This like personal development culture that wants us to have all these goals and do all the, and I think that's really good. Like you should absolutely have to have a vision for your life, but you
Yeah.
also it does like things kind of fold in, like something
Yeah.
works and then something doesn't and then something works, and you have to kind of be open to that. If you're holding so tightly to the one thing that you want to happen,
Yeah.
like that's probably not where you're going to end up. But,
Yeah.
it's like you kind of, this is the door that's opening today. I'm going to walk through it. This is the door
Yep.
that's opening tomorrow.
Yep.
And then also learning, like, when the doors slam in your face, that's just not for you. That's not the thing that you're
Yeah.
supposed to do, instead of like feeling
Yes.
badly about it. And I've spent time in the places where it's like you ruminate in that. And I'm like, finally realized like that just wasn't for you. It's, you
Yep.
know, nothing against me or anyone else. It's just not the right thing. And then we just can like quickly move on from it.
Yep. I think what's really interesting about that is when Chad and I first started Craft and Foster, there weren't a lot of like small batch like candle companies out there. Like
Mm,
there were like a handful of us that I feel like a lot of us started similar timing. And we were
mhm,
in California at the time where, like the handmade support local makers, especially like moms
mhm,
doing something with
mhm.
their hands, all that. We that all played into us like really
Sure.
going. But I can remember like looking around back then and even being like, man, why does it seem like it's so easy for them to get from point A to point B? Why are we struggling? Why is this so
Yep.
hard? I think in the last couple years, I've really come to this understanding of like what's supposed to be ours and what we're supposed to be doing is what we're gonna do. And it's not
Mm,
what's not for us is just not for us, and
yeah,
it that takes like a I don't know, like a deep gut strength to be able to be
it
like, what,
does.
I really wanted that thing, but it just wasn't for me, and
Mhm,
we have definitely had things of that nature happen within
mhm,
Craft and Foster, and then, just within life in general, as we've
mhm,
tried to figure out, I feel like every season of life, you're trying to figure out what you're doing and what is life,
mhm,
what's my purpose and what am I supposed to be doing here, and just coming to a place of peace with like what's for me is for me and everything else is
mhm.
not. And it helps you not chase down things um that just, will take you on detours you don't need to go down. We've had lots of those. So
Yeah, and we all have, and I think that's, like, one of the gifts of time and age and all
mhm,
these things that we can see that, but I think it's a really important message for people listening who maybe are an entrepreneur or are thinking about doing something. It's like, yeah, take like if you never would have done the shelves, like you said, you wouldn't have ended up with the candles. So that was a worthy step. That was an important step. And so
yeah,
it's like, and I can even see now in certain things where I look at other people, maybe their organization or business has grown to a place, and I'm like, part of me is like, ooh, I wish I would have gotten to that place. But the deep knowing part of me says, no, that actually wasn't for you. There's
yeah,
something else that you're doing the right thing
yeah,
here for you, and there's other things in this direction, and to
hmm,
get to that place. And I think that you're right, it's like that intuition, that Holy Spirit, that
yeah,
deep knowing, and then just like sitting there and allowing that, I think is like such a beautiful wisdom that you shared.
yeah. It's not easy always, but
No,
it's
it's not.
definitely the right route.
It's not. So I'd love to know, like you said, Neiman Marcus found me and I was like making candles in my kitchen. Like, how did all of that
Yeah.
happen? Like, I think, in collaborations and brands and building brands, like sometimes that takes forever. Like, how did that happen so organically for you, do you think?
Well, it's been really interesting because it's something Chad and I have been talking to each other about a lot recently. And there are two things. One, I think we put ourselves out there with a product.
Mm,
I mean, we hit the ground running. We were like, if we're doing this, we're doing this,
we're doing it.
So we said yes to just almost every opportunity that came our way. Like there was
Mm,
nothing too small and nothing too big. And so,
mhm,
which, now it's not necessarily my advice to say yes to everything that comes your way.
mhm,
But I think some of that was it. Like I was willing to work through the night, not sleep, just, you know, pound these candles out and get them to where they need
mhm,
to go. So there's like this hard work piece behind it that Chad and I just like we were willing to put in the work, and I think
mhm,
and to make the sacrifices necessary to put in the work.
mhm,
And then I think the other side of it is it just comes back to like it's the thing that wanted to happen. It's like I look
mm,
at it now where we are now in our business, and I know this was what Jesus wanted. This is what God
mm,
wanted to happen. Um,
mhm,
so, without that piece of it, like we have made so many. Chad and I are both very creative humans. Um,
mhm.
if you saw the back end of our business, the spreadsheet side, you'd be like, okay, we're gonna need to get you some kind of system here. My system works
Mhm.
for me, but if someone else came in and looked at it, they'd be like, what is all this?
Mhm.
So it's, we worked really hard and then we made a lot of bad decisions, and it's still God was with us and
Yeah.
us through those hard times. And we took on a business partner super early because we didn't think we could do it on our own. And it turned out that he was an incredible human, just didn't have the same vision, and so
Mhm.
almost took us out trying to figure out how to
Wow.
navigate that thing. And then, just we moved across the country. We were living in California where everything is like 20 times more expensive than the Midwest, and trying to build a business there. And, we powered through, made bad choices, but God still was with us, and I think
Mhm.
that's the thing. Like, we wouldn't be here if Jesus didn't want us here. Like, we
Right.
should have been taken out a long time ago if this wasn't supposed to be. So, I think it's those two things. We worked really hard. We powered through. We kept going. Um,
Mhm.
and then, I think God's hand has been in it since
Mhm.
before it even started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to share a little bit about, like your faith, because you mentioned that that's an important part of your life and even in how you make choices for your business. And I know that you've gone through a lot personally,
Mhm.
with being a medic and PTSD and being a mom. I mean, all of those things. And it's like, how did that come to be? I mean, you've seen a lot of really hard things in the world.
Yeah. Mhm.
How I always wonder for myself, and I think people listening, it's like I go through these hard things, I see these hard things in the world. How do you come to that place of peace? Like, how is that something that you could share just a little bit about if people are
Yeah.
curious about that for themselves?
Yeah. I mean, so I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I actually grew up in foster care. So, my parents were both addicts, and, I was like in and out of the home with them and with all kinds of
Mm,
different foster families and all this kind of stuff. And then shortly after I turned 18, I joined the military, went through all of that. And I kind of was like a soul kind of being tossed to and fro. I didn't really have any kind of an anchor, of any kind, kind of like a gypsy soul, sort of. And
mhm,
my uh, Iraq kind of was like the cherry on the top for me. Like, I think my childhood, I had all these traumas, and then I go to war as a 20-year-old young
mm,
girl with all
mhm,
these men, and it just experienced horrific things. And then I came
mhm,
home and I was so lost, and the trauma was like just bubbling over. It wasn't just the war, it was the childhood and the war. And
mhm,
all the things, and my friend had found Jesus while I was in Iraq. And she had written me letters and stuff like that. And when I was in Iraq, oddly enough, the chaplain that was attached to us had given me a book about this missionary guy named Jim Elliot. And I just thought this guy was so
mm,
incredible, how he like followed God. And I had like a just a general tiny little picture of Jesus and not really understanding how it all worked. And um I when I got home, I was like, I mean, I was ready to just be done. I had a really,
mhm,
really rough go. And my best friend came and picked me up. I mean, I looked homeless when I went to church the first time. I had been
mm,
lying around, not doing anything, and not eating. Just, I really was hoping that I would make it. Um,
mhm,
and so I ended up at church, and I sat in the back. I didn't want to talk to anybody, didn't want anything to do with anybody. And this guy named Shannon Cap came up to me after, and he was like, I think we should pray for you. And so him and these other guys marched me back into this back room, and they were all praying. I didn't know what was happening. I don't remember like a specific time that I was like, yes, Jesus, but something happened in
mhm,
that moment that captured a piece of my heart that I could
mm.
never, um, I mean, I owe everything to that moment.
Wow.
And so, and then shortly after that, I started an internship, it just went all in, like 2 weeks later.
Mm.
And I traveled all over the world, did missions, preached all over
Wow.
the world, helped plant churches. I mean, my degree is in biblical studies and pastoral leadership. So I thought for sure I'd be
Mm.
like, I'd have a church today. And or
Wow.
either that or I'd be raising my babies in like, remote jungles in Asia, or something like
Mm.
that. But,
Hmm.
I think my faith has been a journey. I think when I first got saved, it was something new and shiny, and I was able to lean on this newness to get me through a really hard season. And then I
Mhm.
got married and I had 4 kids really quickly. Um,
Mhm.
and, never really had to deal with any of the things behind me, and so, uh, my walk with the Lord has been lots of ups and downs, and there have been
Mhm.
lots of doubts in the in between, but
Mhm.
there have been so many moments that I can't explain away. Or, times where I know God spoke and then I saw it happen, that in the moments where I'm just like, what is life? What is this?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
the suffering, the hurts, the confusion, all the things that you go through. I mean, everybody's got it. The human experience is not an easy one. Um,
Mhm.
but I think the longer that I've journeyed with Jesus, the realer it's become. And I bring my questions to the table, and I bring my doubts to the table, and I don't faith myself into things like maybe I did when I first started walking with
Mm.
Jesus. There are some days I do not have faith to believe that I'm going to get through this process that I'm on. Or, there have been times even with our business that I'm like, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. I don't know how we're just not going to happen. And so I think it's just the longer you journey with Jesus, the more you come to like an authentic place of like, you don't have to pretend to have it all together. You don't have to present a faith that never wavers, or show up with joy in your soul every single time, because sometimes there's despair, and sometimes there's just a real those real moments where you just pour out the darkness that's in you to the Lord, and you're like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. And I think that's where the peace comes from, of with just this understanding in Christianity, that you have to have all of it together, that you can faith yourself into, joy, and believing that everything's going to turn out okay, and all these different things. And I think that God just wants us to come to Him authentically, and to be like,
Mhm.
to bring all the doubts to the table. I think I've spent a lot of the last decade of my life with my heart just really poured out before Him. I don't pretend to
Mhm.
not um, struggle with darkness, and to
Mhm.
act as though, when people talk about like you faking it till you make it, I think
Yeah.
that there are pieces of that that are powerful, but I think there's also in your walk with God, I think He wants the real raw, like,
Mhm.
listen, I don't understand this. Like, why? You're
Mhm.
allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to bring your doubts
Absolutely.
to the table. You're allowed to be like, I don't know what I believe about this. I don't know what
Mhm.
I believe about this. Like, and I think the main thing that I can look back on, and that has brought the most amount of peace, the one thing that I know is Jesus. That
Mhm.
that I am His and He is mine, and um, that without that, I think life is unbearable. I
Mhm.
think it's like, I
Mhm.
don't know how anybody makes it through without the hope of what Jesus brings to the table. That
Mhm.
in this life there will be suffering, but one
Mhm.
day everything will be made perfect. And
Mhm.
He sees every moment of the suffering, and He is with us. And even when we think we're not going to make it through, He's right there with us. And I think it's there. I can't count the amount of times that I've been stuck in my bed in the last decade, where I'm just
Mhm.
like, I mean, God, if you want to take me, that's okay. And I mean, I have 4 kids too, and so there's like those pieces of it too. Like, you're trying to show up the best you can for your children and your family and your husband and all the different things. And then at the same time, you're running this crazy business and
Mhm.
trying to work out the trauma of the last 4 decades of life behind you, and it's
Yeah.
life's hard, but
Life's hard.
I it's not easier with Jesus, but it's better than
Mhm.
being without Him. And I think that's like the main thing. I've gone through lots of ups and downs in my faith and all of that. And yeah, I think the one thing I just can't get away from is how loved I am, and I am his and he is mine. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's enough, and sometimes I'll just sleep through the day because it's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's so real, and I love how real you are about it because life is hard and there are so many things that we don't expect.
Mhm.
And I think every human wants to know that they're loved and that their life has purpose and to really
Yeah.
know it, not just hear, but to like really know it because it
Yes.
makes it bearable. And then it also gives us purpose. Like, I think that's one thing I love about your brand is that it's not just about like, here, I'm burning a candle right now. It's not just about the candle, it's
Yes.
about the message, the mission, the purpose that you have
Yes.
behind it.
Yeah.
And so I would love for you to share a little bit about that. Like, I know that you love to honor stories and that, you're doing a Smells Like Hope initiative, which is really cool. And so just talk to us a little bit about how, like, the mission, the heart, the soul behind the brand as it is today, and really like what you
Yeah.
would like to see it be.
Yes. So, COVID kind of gave me a gift that
Mm,
I didn't know it was giving me. It caused us to slow down in a way that it gave me time to really decide like what I wanted this to be. Because, like I said, we didn't plan to have a candle company, and there were
mhm.
times on this journey that I was just like, why am I doing this? Like this is the dream is not to be like in a warehouse pouring candles all day. And so during the 2 years that spanned COVID and all of the ups and downs of all of that, I really got a chance to like dig deep. And if I could do anything with this business, what would I do?
Mm,
um, and I think that is where the Smells Like, we're transitioning into this like Smells Like Hope initiative, which has been God opening up doors. We started to pray and ask the Lord, like, what do you want us doing with this thing?
mhm,
And I did a lot of mission stuff when I first got saved and when I first found Jesus. And so that's always like been part of what I had hoped my life would be about. And during COVID, I met a woman named Nancy from an organization that's been working in India for 20 plus years, doing all kinds of work. They do a lot of Jesus stuff, but they also do a lot of just good church, like schools, employing women, feeding people, working with differently abled people, all that kind of stuff. So I got an opportunity to go out and sit with them and hear what they were doing. And I had no idea why I was there or what God
mm,
was doing. And I'm at this conference, and I remember I was sitting at the table on the very last day, just still really confused. Like, God, why am I here? What do you want from me? Like, whatever you want, you can have it, but I don't know what you
mhm,
want.
mhm,
Chad goes to get breakfast, and they're getting ready for the last morning session, and there is a man there, and he's like practicing worship. And I just felt like he was like it was like a moment. I felt like he was like
mm,
over me and the heavens parted. And I opened up my Bible and I started reading John chapter 6, where Jesus has this massive crowd sitting around him, and his disciples are there, and everyone's hungry, and Jesus asks his disciples, and he's like, "How are we going to feed these people?" And his disciples are like, "We can't. I don't know what." Like, even if we had everything if we added everything we all have up, we still couldn't do it. And then Jesus like, "What do you have?" And there's like a little boy
mm,
there who's got some fishes and loaves, and Jesus like, "Well, bring me that. What you do have, bring it to me." um,
mm,
and watch what I can do with it. And that's kind of, and then he feeds the 5,000 people, which was much more than 5,000 people. Those are 5,000 men, right? Um,
mm,
and then there were leftovers. The
yeah,
disciples all went around and gathered up the leftovers, and I felt like God was like, "Melissa, what do you have in your hands?" And to be honest, Craft and Foster is literally our only asset. We don't own a home yet.
mhm,
Um, we've poured everything back into the business to get it to where it is today. And I was like, "Jesus, this is all I got. I got this candle company, and I know how to pour candles. I'm kind of a machine, you know." And I felt like God was like, "Give it to me, and watch me feed my people." And um,
wow,
And so I was like, all right. And I left that day having Craft and Foster just in my hands, like open in my hands, like, God, whatever you want to do with this thing, do it. Cause I don't want just a candle company.
Mhm.
I have no desire to own like a manufacturing facility. I don't, that's not my heart. And so whatever you want to do with it, let's do it. And then, I think 6 months later, I went to India for the first time, um,
Wow.
just to see if I could source stuff there, if there was a place, if there was something that spoke to our souls about who and where and how we would do it. And we ended up in kind of like the heart of India at a location where there it's like a women's center. Um,
Mhm.
and I just knew that's where we were supposed to be and what we were supposed to be doing. And so for the last year, I've been dreaming up this line of candles called Tove, which means the goodness of God. Um, and we've been working out the logistics of, building a facility there and hiring women. And, the women that we were able to hire are women who wouldn't be considered hireable because they have no education. And, India still definitely has the caste system in place where, if you're in the bottom castes, you don't do things, so it's you don't get to work.
You don't work if you're
Yeah,
in the bottom
you,
ca
you can work, but the work that you do isn't is like the lowliest things that they can think
Okay.
of, like,
So
you
not even making candles would be on the
no,
list.
nope,
Wow.
not at all. So and then also I think to be hired by a company like ours, like they wouldn't be allowed the honor of that, like that's how they would kind of like see it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we have to be really careful when we're doing all of this and how we explain it and who we talk about and where it's at and all of that, because there are
Mhm.
logistical security things that,
Sure.
but yeah, these women are just the most beautiful souls. And when
Mm.
I got to go back in March and I got to teach them how to make candles, and
Oh.
everything was against us. Like I had gotten it to India and our stuff still hadn't cleared customs. Like it was just sitting there, like nobody, like they were waiting for us to bribe them or something. I don't know. Like I was just like, God, what are you doing? Like,
Mm.
I spent a year doing what you asked me to do. And I think we were like a few days behind, and then it was like a straight up miracle that things got to us when they did. Like it was like they were stuck in customs, and then an hour and a half later they were from a different state in India and they were with us there.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
it was wild how it all went down, but I got to teach them how to make candles, and they are just I mean, they've just been through a lot in life, and it's a different kind of struggle than
Mm.
any kind of struggle we experience here in the US, and
Yeah.
um, the hope is that so we got to build a facility there for them to pour candles in.
Wow.
And we should get the first batch of candles that they've made sometime in the next month or so, so we'll get to launch the line, which is really incredible. But the goal with it is to eventually do all the parts of candle making there, and to employ villages of women and people from lower castes that wouldn't
Mm.
have opportunities outside of their caste. So like, growing the soy and making soy wax. And there's a village that I went to the first time I was there that was just like, I know so much that God wants me to do something in that village, and we're going to have them do the wicks, make the wicks and prep them for the women and stuff. So that will be 2024. We'll get them going on that. So being able to like kind of do the whole process there. And then the profits from that line will go into the Smells Like Hope initiative, which is literally just whatever good we can do in the world, we're going to do it. So,
Mhm.
feeding babies, educating little girls, veterans. I'm also working on a veterans line I mean, I've been working on it for 2 years, and it's so near and dear to my heart. It's
Mhm.
to honor women veterans.
Oh, I
Uh,
love that.
and
What's the
that
name of it? Do you have a name for it, the
Yeah,
line?
it's called Valora, which means
Very
valor.
cool.
And
Mm.
each of the candles represent like a group of women, but they're named after one woman. Um,
Okay.
and my one of my favorites is Tubman. We did one for Harriet Tubman because a lot of people know her from a lot of things, but they don't realize that she's actually a veteran. I mean, she didn't get called a veteran and never got veteran status or
Mm.
any of the benefits of being a veteran. But I mean, she led raids and freed slaves and ran a whole network of spies. And I mean,
Wow.
she was absolutely a veteran. So
Yes.
yeah, and
Wow.
so we have 4 candles launching for that. Anytime we're working on the last pieces of it, it's every little detail is like so. It's like so much work. So
It
uh,
is. People don't
yeah,
realize behind the scenes, like, all that goes into bringing something to the world. It's truly
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm super excited about that, and the hope there is, I mean, there are so many wonderful organizations that are, helping veterans, but there's, like,
Yes.
something kinda stirring in my soul that maybe, even our followers would, like, nominate a veteran in their life, and then we would take
Mm.
the profits and bless them, like, maybe there's a veteran out there that needs a roof on their house, a new
Their
roof.
house.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's maybe we'll buy them a new roof or, I don't know exactly how it will work, but just, I have this like this thing in my soul, like if the thing I could leave behind when I pass one day is just like a wake of goodness,
Mm.
like that would be I would feel like my life had purpose,
Their
and I think
purpose.
and
Yeah.
so I'm always looking like what can we do with this thing that we have that God wanted to happen to do his work in the world, and I think that's I 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even been able to see this yet,
Mm.
and so it was like a lot of I love what you talk about a lot about the keep going. Like I spent
Mhm.
at least half of the last decade just putting one foot and step, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, and I just kept going even when I didn't understand why we had a candle company, when I didn't know why I was working so hard. When Cruz was born, it was like the height of all the crazy when we had Neiman Marcus and all these people wanted candles. And it was like, it was just Chad and I, and so, and so many, I missed a lot of his first 5 years of life, and just trying to understand, like, God, what are you doing with this thing? Why do I have it, And seeing it all kind of work together has been really, really beautiful. I think that's the other thing that really gives me peace at the end of the day is this real understanding that God is working it all together.
Mhm.
He is.
Even
Even
when you can't see it.
even when you can't see it, he's working. That's what there's a song, it gets me
Yeah.
every time. Even when you can't feel it, he's working. He
Yeah.
is. And I wouldn't have been able to dream this up 2 years ago, you know.
Mm.
Um, and I have no idea what it's gonna look like 2 years from now, but we're just gonna keep going, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
open-handed.
yep,
L
open-handed, open heart,
Yeah.
open hands. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's, like, one of the cool parts of being a creative person is, like, we kinda crave that, unknown in some
Yeah.
senses. So I
Yes.
think that that's sort of interesting to us,
Mm.
but, we're still humans, right? And it's like it's like, "Oh, well, we gotta feed the kids and do the things," and so that gets a little bit scary sometimes, but, I mean, I think that, I what I just love about your message is, like, you're building this business, and that's really important for your family, but
Mhm.
you're building something more than a business. You're building goodness, and you're building love, and you're building
Mm.
service, and you're building better things for other people, or just even creating awareness around those women's stories in India and
Yeah.
bringing value to them as human beings, as women. I mean, that's like that's what our world needs so much more of.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
the women in India are gonna be a really interesting journey for me. I really am
Mm.
still learning how to even talk about that experience with them, I
Mhm.
think, um, they even in their homes, like, they have to be fully covered, like,
Wow.
they can't show their face, um which,
Mm.
they just, it's very like they have a job to do, but it's not necessarily like their soul has worth, like
Mm.
their life has worth. And if I could just give them a glimpse of that, that maybe they can pass down to a
Mm.
daughter that might
Mhm.
get a bigger glimpse of that, um, I feel like that's success. I think that that's been what's really interesting. I would love to just go to India and blow the socks off of everything and just be like, women are amazing.
Yeah.
You got, your soul has worth and you're not just a
Yeah.
baby maker, and um,
Yeah.
which, I mean, that being able to carry a baby and bring life into
Mhm.
this world is an amazing thing, but just this understanding of who they are has worth outside of that and what they do in their homes. And um, it's going to be really interesting. I had this thought recently, like, what if it has nothing to do with me, or
Mm.
them even? What if it has something to do with one of my granddaughters being who God
Yeah.
created to be, or has something to do with one of their granddaughters doing something God has already planned, and
Mm.
it's
And
going
just part of
for
the
them to
story.
just get to be a piece of it.
Yeah.
And even that is worth it.
Mm.
I think it's like that, those glimmers of hope, like that's
Yeah.
that whole Smells Like Hope initiative. I think our lives run on hope, even when it doesn't feel like you have hope.
Yeah.
Um, and I think if we can just spread hope around a little bit, I will feel like
Mhm.
my life had purpose. you know?
Yeah, I love that. I told the story on a previous podcast, but it's so applicable here. I was in Boston with my son Blake, and he wants to be a scientist. So we always go to like a science museum if we go somewhere. We were in the Boston Science Museum. And you walk into this room, it was called the math room, like the history of mathematics. And the
Mhm,
back wall, it was like a rectangular room, and the back wall was just lined with like little bricks, kind of
mhm,
like literally the size of a brick. And the whole wall was just lined of it. And it was all people who had contributed. I don't know if it was like 1600 or 1400 to present day, who
mhm.
all contributed something to like mathematics. But the cool thing about it is like each person built on the person before.
Yes.
And there were some bricks that said like he died trying. There were other
Mhm.
bricks that was like, well, they realized that actually wasn't true about mathematics, but then the next person figured this out. And that was like such a profound experience for me because, well, I think we're all so of value and importance each human being, we
Mhm.
also overly see ourselves in that way. And
Yeah.
it's almost like, what if we have this baton and it's like a relay and we're running it and then we're going to pass it to somebody else. But if
Mhm.
we don't run our part of the race, we will not be able to pass that baton. And so I've been just listening to you. I've been thinking a lot about that lately, like the faithfulness of running your race
Yes.
may not be like exactly what you think it's going to be, but it might impact generations beyond us. But and if we don't, how important, like equally how detrimental that would be.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's something for people to think about in this culture where it's like have a goal, reach it, make an impact, have followers, be
Yeah.
known, which all are good things. Like all of us need to do that if we're building something,
Yeah.
but there's something more and longer lasting that I think we're supposed to be building. And I just thought, like, it just came to mind, and I thought that was really cool that you mentioned that.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. And math taught you that.
Yeah, of all
Yeah.
things, of
I
all
know.
things.
Yeah, I think that's pretty incredible. That's what I think about, like when we do these things called candle labs, and we do them all over the place. And a lot of the times when I'm talking about craft and foster and all of that, I always add in there somewhere of like, if you've got something in your heart to do, do it.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
at least try, because
Mhm.
you never know what it's supposed to be, or like, and I think a lot of things in my life have nothing to do with me and everything to do
Mhm.
with other things that God's doing, and I think maybe some of that too is probably like the older you get, the more you realize, like, I'm just a human. I am just a human out here doing my
Yeah.
part. And the
Yeah.
less that you have to be like the shining star and all those kind of things. I
Mhm.
think there were probably times in my life that I wanted a stage or a platform, or hoped that I'd have mass influence or different things like that. I think it's just kind of part of growing up and stuff. But I think at the same time, it's just this like deep understanding of like, I got to do my part. And if I could help anybody else do their part, I got to do that too. You
Mhm.
know, and a lot of the parts are just unseen parts, you know. I was
Yeah.
thinking about like Chip and Joanna Gaines the other day, like, yeah, my gosh, the empire that has been built, and they are
Yes.
incredible humans, and um but just the understanding of like that's like a once in a lifetime opportunity that happened there, and
Mhm.
nobody got to see the like decades of work that happened before they ever hit the
Before that.
you know
Yeah.
and all of that. And not everybody gets to be Chip and Joanna Gaines, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Maybe, but you might be the store owner in Rockford, Illinois, that's downtown selling cool things like Chip and Joanna Gaines,
Yep.
and you're
Yep.
doing your part in the economy and in
Mm.
people's lives, and who knows who you'll meet through your store or whatever else, Um, and so I just think yeah, I think getting over like this, you have to build something huge and great and big, and um it could be the littlest things that have such an impact on this like ripple of life that in things that God's doing, um
Yes.
and maybe that's comes with getting older, turned 40, and it just
Mhm.
feels like, I don't know, it feels like a milestone of
Mhm.
of maturity and growth, and just a different understanding of like, 4 decades down, here we go. you know
Yeah. Well, and it's wisdom, right? From your story. Like you've allowed it to shape you and that's
Mhm.
also like I think super cool. So
Yeah.
I'd love to know like I'm sure people are listening they're like, "Well, she's got 4 kids. How do you do all of that?" Like, people ask me about that too sometimes and I don't think there's I mean, if you looked upstairs in my house right now, like there's laundry everywhere and the dishes aren't done and it's a disaster. So that's just being real. But,
Yeah.
you work alongside your husband, you have 4 kids, like you have a lot on your plate.
Mhm.
What have you learned in doing this? Even like a little advice that you could give for other like mom entrepreneurs or families who are looking to build a business to do it well, but to do it
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. I think I was thinking about this even the other day. I've had having a moment with one of my daughters, and I think I don't think we necessarily do it well. We
Mm.
just do it. We do it the best we can each day. And I think it's like this knowing of like, when I say yes to work, it means I'm saying no in some things to my family. If
Mm.
I say yes to my family, I know I can't accomplish these things at work. And if I say yes to work and my children, maybe Chad suffers the teens as his wife,
Mhm.
and probably that's where the suffering happens the most, because you got things to
Yep.
happen. But I think it's like, I don't know, I don't think I have it down. I don't To be honest, I don't think I believe in balance. I don't
Mhm.
know if
I
that's
don't think I
probably
do
like,
either. I don't think you can
yeah,
have it. I don't think you can be creating anything in this world
yeah,
unless you're like a person maybe without a spouse or without children.
yeah,
Even then, it's hard because you have other things that are important to you.
yeah,
But I don't think that there is balance. I don't think we can have that.
no.
A- And I think it's a fallacy to think that we should,
Yeah,
frankly.
I think it creates, just an opportunity to fail every day.
And
When
anxiety,
your
I
goal
think.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, the anxiety, yes.
Yeah.
When the goal is balance and giving an equal part to every single piece of your life and doing it all super well, um,
Mhm.
I think it just sets you up for failure, which
Yeah.
some people will probably be like, "That's I'm really sad to hear that," but the reality is, it's like, we have been doing this for quite some time, and what I've learned is there's never been a season of balance ever. I
Mhm.
I give and I take, and I wake up every day. Some days I'm not the best version of myself, but and I just give the whole day the best that I got, and some days
Mhm.
the best that I have goes until about 2 p.m., and then I'm just like, "You probably don't want nobody wants to be around me. I've given
Yep.
all I've got by 2 p.m." Um, but yeah, I think I've stopped trying to balance, because when you have 4 children, there is literally no balance. We've got them all in sports right now.
Oh gosh.
I literally have no clue what I was thinking.
Yes, that's a
I'm
lot.
coaching one soccer team. The 2 girls are also in soccer. My son plays basketball. Every night of the week is something. Trying to cook dinner so they're not eating McDonald's, like just all the things. And some days, they're eating cereal for dinner, and
Mhm.
the best I could do
That's
today.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
that's, like, coming to grips with, like, the best you can do is
Mhm.
really amazing, and, I have this thing, and it's, like, deeply ingrained in my soul, and I think it helps, alleviate some of the guilt I feel as a mother, because I'm a working mother, and I'm also trying to do what God created me to do while I'm a
Mhm.
mother, because I think both are important jobs.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but in Acts chapter 17, Paul is talking before all the leaders, and he says that God sets the boundaries of our life and the time that we live, and
Hmm.
and so that we have the best chance of coming to find him. And I think about that in my children's life. Like, they were born. I think about it in my own life. I've gone through everything I've gone through. I was born to who I was born to in the time I was born, with the best shot of coming to know Jesus, that something in my soul would long for him and I would find him, right?
Hmm.
I think that about my children too. God thinks that I am their best shot at being who he created them to be. And I
Yeah.
think that takes a lot of pressure off of, like, and the reality is I know that I'm going to fail my kids. I know I'm going to fail my business in some ways. I know that I'm going to fail in my marriage at different times. Like, those things are never going to be perfection, because I am a human and I can only do what I can do. And
Yeah.
some days I'm ornery, and I need some more sleep, or I haven't eaten until 5 p.m. or whatever. You get a little hangry. But I'm showing up the best that I can, and I believe that I'm the right person for the job in my children's lives. What I
Mm.
bring to the table is what they need to be who God created them to be, even when I feel like it's not everything that maybe my friend down the road's doing, or how they're
Mhm.
raising their babies, or that's the hard part about social media, is you're able to compare yourself to all these other things. And I've tried to shove myself into other mom shoes and mom a different way than I know how, or show up in different ways for my children that are just completely unnatural to me because I think I have to, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the longer I've been a mom, which, my oldest is only 12, so it's not like I have grown children and their successes already, but they kind of are. They're so great. My
Mhm.
kids are so great. Um,
Mm.
but I think it's like I I'm doing the best that I have with the skills that I have and the tools in my tool belt, with the life I've been given, and I believe it's enough. I believe it's enough. And where I fall short, God will step in at some point. And where I've hurt them or I've failed them or whatever else, there's counseling for that. And
Yes.
I would be joyful to pay for it one day. And I think God will do what I can't. And
Mhm.
I think there's no child that goes unscathed in this world from trauma
No.
from their parents, because we're all human and we've all got our junk that we're working out at the same time as we're trying to raise children.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I've just really come to this grips of, like, I am their best shot. I'm their
I
best shot.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That takes a lot of pressure off.
It really,
I think it really does because I know sometimes I feel like, "Oh, I should have done this and I should have done that, and they're gonna wish I did this," and I think and I love too what you said because it's a big thing that I have wrestled with is I am called to be their mother and I'm called to be the woman God created me to be. And sometimes those things feel somewhat in contradiction a little bit, not
mhm.
necessarily like, mission wise, but time wise,
Yeah.
energy wise, resource
Yep.
wise. And I think as a woman who I feel very called in my life to do certain things, like that's part of me and I should fight for that too. Just like I
Yep.
fight for my kids
Yep.
for the things that they need and to give them what they need. I also deserve that. I maybe those aren't the right words, but that fight for
Yeah.
me because that's who God made me to be. And I think I love to see women step into that because I think it's both. And I think you're right. Like we're the people for the job with the kids that we have. And I'm going to remember that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's
And
really good.
y I think that's, like I think that's what's really important about this is, like, you know, you were talking about the passing of the baton. There's, like, all
Mhm.
these women behind us that have passed the baton forward to get us to a place
Mhm.
where we can even sit on a podcast and say that our
Yes.
is outside of our home also, and that
Yes.
there's worth in that, and there's value in that, and there's that it's beautiful to
Mhm.
do both and just think about like when we pass our baton on, I think about my daughters, like, Ezra, she's fiery, she's fire. She's going to be
Mhm.
like a little CEO, like, running the world and won't think a thought about the fact that she is a CEO and a mother if she chooses to
Yeah.
be a mom, and all those kind of things. And Izzy too. Like if you ask Izzy what she wants to do, she wants to work for Kraft and Foster and she wants to do good in the world. That's what she wants to do.
That's so
I,
cool.
I get to pass
Yeah.
on something to my girls that you know what you really literally can do anything that
Mhm.
you want to do. Follow your heart, follow the thing in your gut. Like you can do both. You can be a mom, you can be a wife, you can have a home that's not perfectly put together that looks like it just is getting pictures taken tomorrow. Like the same for
Right.
you should see my basement full of laundry. I do not know how you get so much laundry. I don't know where
Yeah,
it
I
comes
don't either.
and it's not perfect. It's wild. I'm looking over right now. There's like 30 pairs of shoes next to the front door. Like, why can't we
Mhm.
put them in the closet?
Yep.
But and it's okay to have a messy house and sometimes feed your kids cereal for dinner, and go after the dreams in your deep soul.
Yeah.
I think all of that is beautiful.
Yeah, that's so well said. I love that. So, this season on the podcast, I'm asking all my guests this question. And so I'm going to ask you, I'm
Mhm,
focusing on who we become in the world and what we create in the world from the heartbreak that we witness
mhm.
around us and the adversities that we faced. And so I think my final question for you is what do you really like about yourself? Like what do you love about Melissa because of the adversities and the challenge and the heartbreak that you witness? Like, what is some beautiful, deep thing that has grown out of that in you that you see in yourself?
I just love so much that you're asking me this question. I
Mhm.
think if you would have asked me this 2 months ago, before I started counseling, I probably would not have been able to answer it. But I
Mm.
think I'm looking back. I spent a lot of time in my life kind of detached from the trauma of
Mhm.
the my childhood and war and all that kind of stuff. And as I've had to take a look at it and start talking about it and doing some of the work to kind of move through it, I realized, that I'm resilient.
Mm.
Like it has been my life. I think if you could look at it like on a like fractions or whatever, like or percentages, probably 90% of my life has been challenge straight uphill battle.
Mm.
And I'm still here. Like I'm
Yeah.
still here moving forward and I genuinely love people and want to help them. And I think it's created this like empathy in me for other people's struggles. Like I think it's sometimes easy to look at the darkness in others and, their struggles and to be like, oh, they're a lost cause. But I I was a lost cause, like
Mm.
I was like bitter and my heart was broken and I was full of darkness and all these things, and yet I'm here here where I am now, and I think
Mm.
it created in me this understanding that there is not one person too far gone for hope to fill their heart and love to change everything, and
Mm.
um, I think it's created this desire in me to play my part in helping others understand that, Um, and yeah, I think the resiliency is like I'm like, dang, I am strong. I am powerful. Can't believe I made it through that, and
Yeah,
um it's interesting because it's hard to like talk about yourself like that, but
it is.
I have been through some things, and I'm going through them. I'm like facing them, and that takes a courage. It
Yes, it
takes so much
does.
courage. So if there's someone out
Yeah.
there that's got some things to face, I'm telling you right now, if I can do it, you can do it. We can do it. It's hard at first to like start journeying through it. It's very difficult. And it's scary. And I do believe when they say it gets worse before it gets better, I think that's really true. Um,
Mhm.
you'll find yourself crying in your basement, repainting your entire house for no reason. And it's like, what am I doing? But yeah, I think I've been through a lot and I'm still here. And
Still here.
I love your keep going so much. I'm probably going to get tattooed somewhere on my body.
Oh, yeah, I love it too. It's like we have to. I mean, it's like, you know, it doesn't mean we're doing it like I always think about that. I'm like, is that toxic positivity? Like truly I've thought of because I like don't want that, but it's like, no, I mean, every day sometimes it's just one foot and maybe
Mhm.
it's just one step because we can't take more than that. Or like my son got up at 3:30 this morning, my son that's disabled and it's like I've been up since then, and it was just like literally some of those nights you're like, I cannot freaking do this anymore, like this is so
Yeah,
hard, I'm so tired, I don't know what he wants, he's hitting me, like it was and
yeah,
it's just like, okay, you just got to keep going, Jessica, to the
keep
next
going.
step, to the next day, this is part of your calling, stay faithful, one
Yeah,
more step, and that's like some days that's all we can offer.
yeah. And it takes courage to offer that. It
Yeah.
takes courage and
Yeah.
it takes strength to offer like just even if it's the tiniest piece of you, the fact that I wake up every morning and I get out of bed and
Mm.
I go for it. Like that
Yeah.
is resilient and it's strong and it's brave and it's courageous um and God's working together something beautiful from it,
That's right.
for you, for me,
Mm.
for everyone,
Everyone.
and yeah, I think I'm a lot stronger than I think I am, you
Yeah.
know,
I love
sometimes, or
that.
than I can see because we see all of our little minute things where we're
Yeah.
just like, I'd rather just Netflix and chill for the next 5 weeks if that's fine,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Melissa, for being on the podcast. You're an amazing human, and I just really admire how just honest and true and gritty that you are about your life, and I love your brand and I love what you're trying to bring to life, and I'm just so excited that our paths crossed, and I
Mhm.
just you have a lot of important work to do, and I just love witnessing just a small part of it.
Yes, same. Thank you for having me. This is the first time I've ever done a podcast, so
Oh, okay. Well, I would never have known that.
yeah, so thank
Awesome.
you. Thank you so much for having me, and all of that same back to you. I think you're an incredible human, full of strength and wisdom, and I'm really glad that you put yourself out here in the world because we all need it.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me here on the Heartstrong podcast. Please rate and review this podcast and share an episode that you love with a friend, because when you do, you help us grow our mission of encouraging people to grow through the challenges of their lives and to live their full potential. We'll see you next time.